Hello, this is Eastern Europe Review, a joint production of BELSAT TV and TVP World, featuring news and analysis from Belarus, Russia and Ukraine. My name is BELSAT and here are today's stories. What led to prison riots in the Russian city of Rostov?
Prisoners were brutally beaten. First, they conducted a cell-by-cell search, took away all the TVs, all the refrigerators, all the fans, and in Rostov now it's 35 degrees.
Felix Dzerzhinsky was the godfather of the Soviet Secret Service and the RedTerror. The main secondary school in Belarus has been named after him.
He personifies political repression against political opponents of the Soviet government.
Many Ukrainians who fled their homes due to the Russian invasion are returning in large numbers.
The state was not physically prepared for such a large number of internally displaced people, and the number is growing.
After prisoners took security guards hostage at the Russian city of Rostov pre-trial detention center on June 16, some employees and management of the center may potentially face charges of negligence. Human rights activists report that approximately 100 prisoners were beaten after the incident. Additionally, men were forced to shave their beards.
There is a prison near my house. Hostages have been taken in the prison.
The first news of the hostage-taking incident appeared in the morning of June the 16th. State media reported briefly. The accused, held in one of the cells of the pre-trial detention Center 1 of the Federal Penitentiary Service for the Rostov region, took 2 employees hostage. The video from the pre-trial detention center shows people with beards and the flag of the Islamic State. One of them is wearing a Mujahideen headband. The prisoners call themselves ISIS soldiers. Russian state media reported, citing law enforcement agencies, that the detainees were kept in separate cells, but there was communication between them.
Inshallah, this group was prepared by Almighty Allah himself with his signs. This hasn't been done spontaneously. It's not done just like that.
They allegedly overpowered the prison wardens, taking their batons from them and seizing fire access. The video shows that they were wielding knives in their hands. According to state media, the takeover took a long time to prepare and was coordinated from the outside.
They somehow agreed that one would knock out the bars, the other somehow knew where to get the keys. It was all very well planned. The media writes that they had prohibited symbols with them. Where did they keep them? It's the same with their phones. This raises a lot of questions for the operational part.
At first, authorities tried to negotiate with the detainees. The prisoners demanded a car, weapons, and the opportunity to leave. Special forces arrived in the city, as well as the leadership of the Federal Penitentiary Service. The media began publishing the names and photographs of the alleged criminals. According to media reports, 3 of them had previously planned a terrorist attack in the Caucasus. They were detained in 2022 and in 2023 sentenced to 18 years in prison.
A hostage rescue operation is being prepared. It is being prepared openly. These are the special forces of the Federal Penitentiary Service.
Nearly at noon local time, shooting began near the pre-trial detention center. Telegram channels close to the Russian security forces reported that a hostage rescue operation had begun. A few minutes later, reports began to appear that all 6 invaders had been eliminated. Allegedly, 3 of them were still conscious at first, but died before the ambulance arrived.
Туда им дорога.
The investigative committee have opened a criminal case regarding the hostage-taking incident. The Central Office of the Federal Penitentiary Service is conducting an investigation into Pre-Trial Detention Center No. 1 and its employees to establish how the prisoners had obtained the knives and flags of the band ISIS.
It's very easy to bring phones into a pre-trial detention center, and this is good old business for absolutely all of its employees. In any colony, in any cell, of course, there are mobile phones.
In the aftermath of the incident, there were severe repercussions for the prisoners themselves.
Prisoners were brutally beaten. First, they conducted a cell-by-cell search, took away all the TVs, all the refrigerators, all the fans, and in Rostov now it's 35 degrees. Inside the pre-trial detention center, the temperature inside the cells can rise to 40 degrees, and then the special forces began to enter each cell, dragging and kicking the prisoners. Many of them started to cut off their beards. All of this was accompanied by beatings and humiliation. As a result, more than 100 prisoners were injured.
According to Human Rights Project, 2 people have died in the past 3 days. Human rights activist Vladimir Osechkin maintains that for more than 2 days, screams and moans of pain were heard by residents of Rostov coming from the detention center.
One of the top educational institutions in Belarus was named after Felix Dzerzhinsky, considered the godfather of the KGB. Throughout Lukashenko's presidency, names honoring infamous Soviet leaders have been prevalent. His political model mirrors that of the Soviet Union, with the KGB remaining a cornerstone of Lukashenko's regime.
The secondary school affiliated with the Belarusian State University has been named after Felix Dzerzhinsky. This means that the most prestigious institution in the secondary education system of Belarus has as its patron an infamous executioner and one of the key figures of the Red Terror in the Soviet Union.
This is open revenge, because in power today, including in the security structures, there are uneducated fools who hate BSU secondary school graduates.
The renaming in honor of Dzerzhinsky has been presented as a request from the school team, which was supported by the Ministry of Education. However, Euro Radio Media, citing its sources, claims that the relevant petition was signed under duress.
The fact that the teachers were forced to sign the petition for renaming can be equated to systemic violence and violation of human rights.
It was Dzerzhinsky who founded the All-Russian Extraordinary Commission, which eventually transformed into the KGB. This organization was responsible for the brutal torture and murder of millions of people, including hundreds of thousands in Belarus. The role of the KGB as a surveillance and punitive body remains significant in Lukashenko's Belarus.
Felix Dzerzhinsky is the face of the Soviet system, an evil empire built on blood. He personifies political repression against political opponents of the Soviet government.
In 2020, teachers and students of the BSU secondary school actively spoke out against injustice. Before the presidential elections, almost 1,200 graduates signed an open appeal against political repression. Since then, at least 15 teachers have been dismissed, and the new director, Matytsin, established close cooperation with the KGB and other authorities.
Belarusian youth think very critically, but I think that parents now have a huge responsibility for the educational choices we make for our children.
Renaming the secondary school is not the first nod to the bloody Soviet past in Belarus. In Minsk, there is an avenue named after Dzerzhinsky, and his monument is situated opposite the KGB building. Monuments to Lenin are preserved throughout the country, and streets are named after notorious Soviet officials in all Belarusian cities.
Lukashenko is trying to adopt the Soviet model, because in his opinion, this is the only thing that can save him. He is trying to justify his slogan, "This is no time for law," because he sees that this has already happened, and it worked.
In the meantime, teachers, students and their parents have to decide whether to stay at the BSU secondary school after it has been renamed, potentially compromising their principles. Many teachers and professors have already left the country and continue to do so in response to the constant repression by the Lukashenko regime against the Belarusian people.
Nearly 130,000 Ukrainians who were displaced due to the Russian invasion have returned to the war zone or temporarily occupied territory. Some people are still struggling to adjust to their new reality after being forced to leave their homes.
Irina and Roman Onyshchenko are showing what their garden looked like after Russian troops blew up the Kakhovka hydroelectric power station last June. They come from Oleshki in the Kherson region. The family spent 1 year and 4 months under occupation. During that time, Irina and Roman lost everything: a small farm, a house that had taken them 30 years to build, and 2 cars, one of which was taken by Russian soldiers.
They said they needed our vehicle to transport combat equipment for the Russian army. What could I do? I thought to myself, you can't refuse, they'll shoot you. Women threw themselves under the wheels of their cars when they came to take them. They told them, if you don't get up now, we'll shoot your husband, and they fired shots into the air or at their feet.
They had to evacuate from the flooded area with the assistance of Russian volunteers traveling through occupied Crimea and Moscow. The Russian army did not even allow Red Cross representatives near Oleshki.
Our people from Kherson wanted to leave, but the Russians wouldn't let them. They were shooting at the boats. There's a village behind Gola Pristan, 20 kilometers away from us. They fired at a boat carrying volunteers and civilians, injuring 11 and killing 3 or 4 people. I can't remember the exact number.
The Onyshchenko family has been living in Kiev for over a year in a rented apartment, with financial support from their children. Irina and Roman have yet to receive a certificate from the state, allowing them to buy a new house, as the authorities have no way of assessing the damage.
There's a state regulation that says a certificate can be issued for the vacated area if a state commission comes and registers it.
According to the Ukrainian authorities, there are 5 million internally displaced people in Ukraine. Due to problems with employment and housing, nearly 130,000 of them have been forced to return home to the combat zone or occupied territory.
The state was not physically prepared for such a large number of internally displaced people, and the number is growing. For example, in May, residents of the Kharkiv region and Vovchansk moved away. Basically, Vovchansk and Kharkiv began to actively evacuate. Last month, 80% of new IDPs came from Kharkiv and the Kharkiv region. If we're talking about places of temporary accommodation, such as available hostels, there are 55,000 to 60,000 places all over the country. That's just over 1% of the population.
It is also difficult for internally displaced persons to adjust psychologically. The main reasons why people return home is because they find it challenging to make connections with new people, and also they desire to be reunited with family.
Often, men who stay in more dangerous regions give ultimatums to women. I can provide examples from my own practice. For example, they demand that the woman either return to the region or they threaten to end the relationship. This can also happen when children struggle to adapt to a new school or experience bullying, or when women want the family to stay together for the children's sake.
Irina and Roman have given up hope of returning home. They also do not expect to be able to recreate everything they had previously worked for. For now, all that remains is reminiscing about their hometown Oleshki.
These are all the stories we have prepared for today. Thank you for watching Eastern Europe Review. Please continue to stay tuned to TVP World.